The smell of burned corn doesn't leave your clothes easy. It clings. Even now, weeks later, I can still catch it on the wind when I walk past the field. 40 acres of blackened stalks that used to glow gold at sunset. What was once life now looks like a battlefield. Stalks snapped like broken ribs, earth scorched down to clay, the faint shimmer of gasoline puddles under my boots. Security camera footage told the story better than I ever could. Delilah Thornfield, our self-appointed HOA president, marching into my field at 2:13 a.m., gas can swinging like a purse, lighter clutched in the other hand. The same woman who'd lectured me for months about community standards and aesthetic value. She thought she was teaching me a lesson for defying HOA regulations. She had no idea she'd just committed arson on a crop insured for $2 million. My name's Ezra Caldwell, 52 years old, lifelong agricultural engineer turned reluctant farmer. I'd spent 2 decades designing irrigation systems for multinational corporations that cared more about quarterly profits than soil health. When my uncle passed last year, leaving me his 47-acre plot outside Cedar Falls, Iowa, I figured it was a sign. A chance to return to real farming, the kind where dirt gets under your nails and you sleep with the windows open to hear the crickets. My wife, Nora, a librarian who'd had enough of HOA bake sales and suburban gossip, packed our lives into a U-Haul without a second thought. Our teenage daughter June wasn't thrilled, but she warmed up to the idea once she realized her TikToks would now feature rolling fields and open skies instead of concrete walls. The land was old, alive in a way city soil never is. My uncle had spent his final years growing heritage corn varieties, ancient hybrids like Glass Gem and Dakota Black, names that sounded more like gemstones than plants. His barn was full of mason jars labeled with fading handwriting, each one holding seeds that shimmered like polished jewels. When I contacted Dr. Rachel Yamamoto at the University of Iowa's Agricultural Department, her reaction nearly shook the phone line. These weren't just heirloom curiosities. They were genetically distinct strains thought lost decades ago. Within a week, we'd established a formal research partnership. The university provided testing and classification. I handled cultivation and fieldwork. Then came the real surprise: heritage crop insurance. Rachel explained that because these seeds had documented genetic rarity, they qualified for federal research insurance, valued by scientific worth, not market price. The policy wasn't cheap, but when you're protecting irreplaceable genetic material that could advance agricultural medicine, $3,000 a year felt like pocket change. The problem? My field sat right next to a newly built subdivision, Millbrook Estates, a cluster of prefab houses and manicured lawns ruled by an HOA president named Delilah Thornfield. Delilah was 47, twice divorced, and wore her authority like perfume, loud and impossible to ignore. I met her the first week, standing at the mailbox. Her voice smooth as syrup but twice as sticky. "Mr. Caldwell, I hope you understand that agricultural operations affect property values in our community." I gestured toward the field where morning dew shimmered like glass. "This farm's been here since 1880. Your HOA's been around since 2018. I think the land has seniority." Her smile froze, a perfect mask over boiling irritation. "Well, we'll see about that." What followed was an education in suburban warfare. Noise complaints for starting my tractor at dawn. Zoning violations for commercial agriculture on residential adjacent land. Anonymous EPA tips about hazardous pesticide disposal. The irony was delicious. I run a 100% organic operation, certified by the state. But harassment doesn't rely on facts. It feeds on nuisance. The first real warning came mid-July. It was dawn, the air thick, the kind that sticks to your neck. I was walking the rows when I noticed odd discoloration patterns in the leaves. Not random, geometric. Someone had sprayed something, herbicide, most likely, in perfect rectangles through the crop. Later that day, I caught her walking her Pomeranian along my fence line, clipboard in hand, pretending to inspect property boundaries. "Morning, Delilah. You been doing some late-night gardening?" She blinked, feigning confusion. "Excuse me?" "Herbicide. I found evidence in my field. Looks like your handiwork," she laughed, a brittle sound. That's absurd. Maybe it's runoff from my dandelion spray. Dandelions don't grow in rectangles. She smiled again, and this time I saw the truth. Behind the foundation and pearls, she wasn't irritated. She was unhinged. After that, I installed cameras. Caught her trespassing twice more, snapping photos, pacing my rows. But it wasn't until August that she escalated to legal warfare. She filed a noise complaint, citing a new township ordinance that banned loud machinery before 7 a.m. My tractor started at 6:30. The complaint came with a warning, $500 per violation. The township compliance officer, her cousin Garrett, showed up sweating through his polyester uniform, clipboard trembling. "Mr. Calloway, we've had reports you're violating the noise ordinance." I poured him coffee, black enough to raise the dead. "Garrett, Iowa's Right to Farm Act protects agricultural operations older than the developments around them. My farm's been running since your granddad was chasing fireflies. You can't find me for farming," he stammered, unsure. I handed him a printed copy of the statute. He didn't come back. That should have ended it. It didn't. 2 weeks later, I discovered her white vinyl fence encroached 3 feet into my land, confirmed by a professional survey. I filed a formal trespass notice and delivered it to her doorstep personally. She opened the door in a silk robe and avocado face mask, the color of swamp moss. "What is this?" "Your fence, my land. You've got 30 days to move it." Her shriek probably startled birds in the next county. "That's impossible." "I had this surveyed." "By who? Your cousin Garrett?" That did it. Her composure cracked like cheap porcelain. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle windows. The next week, my cameras caught her again, this time at 11 p.m., carrying a sprayer. By sunrise, 200 more stalks were poisoned, forming the word "move" visible from her upstairs window. Subtlety was not her strong suit. When I confronted her the next morning, she denied everything, voice trembling but eyes defiant. I told her she owed me $800 in destroyed seed. She responded by filing a harassment report with the sheriff's office. Deputy Tom Brennan showed up that evening, hat in hand. "Ezra, you threatened this woman with farm tools?" I sighed and showed him the footage. Delilah, herbicide, the whole circus. He watched, whistled, then shook his head. "She's escalating and fast. Document everything. Folks like her tend to do something stupid before they quit." He wasn't wrong. As his patrol car rolled down the gravel drive, I looked up at Delilah's window. She was there, phone pressed to her ear, pacing like a general preparing for war. The corn swayed in the humid wind, whispering secrets. The air smelled like rain and gasoline, and for the first time I realized she wasn't done yet. She was just warming up. The wind changed the day before the fire. It came from the south, hot and heavy, carrying the smell of rain that never came. You could feel tension in the air, like static before a lightning strike. Even the crows were quiet. That evening, Nora set 2 cups of coffee on the porch rail, watching the clouds turn bruise purple. "She's not done," she said. I nodded. I know, we'd both seen the signs. The late-night car idling at the cul-de-sac. The way Delilah's security lights flicked on whenever I stepped outside. She'd become obsessed, filing complaints, calling the township, even emailing my research partner at the university, claiming unsafe agricultural activity. That last one nearly did it. Rachel called me the next morning, her voice shaking. "Ezra, someone sent pictures of your field with captions saying you're growing unregistered GMO variants. They CC'd the Environmental Oversight Board." I closed my eyes. "Delilah, who else would have the time to stalk your farm at midnight?" It was harassment, plain and simple. But harassment isn't illegal unless you can prove intent, and she was smart enough to dance on that line. 2 nights later, at 2:14 a.m., my motion cameras pinged. At first I thought it was another raccoon. Then I saw the outline, a figure in a white cardigan, hair pinned up, walking through my field with a flashlight. She stopped near the irrigation tank. Something glinted, metal. I zoomed in. A red gas can. My heart went cold. I grabbed the shotgun, not loaded, just a warning tool, and ran out barefoot, gravel biting into my feet. The field was silent except for the whisper of dry corn leaves brushing together like brittle paper. "Delilah," I shouted. My voice cracked the night open. She froze, caught in the beam of my floodlight. For a split second she looked like a ghost, pale, guilty, cornered. Then she ran. I reached the spot she'd been standing. Gasoline. The smell was unmistakable. A dark, shimmering puddle around the base of the stalks. She hadn't lit it yet. Not yet. I called the sheriff's office. Tom Brennan arrived 20 minutes later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When I showed him the footage, his face darkened. "She's gone too far, Ezra. I'll file for a restraining order first thing in the morning." Morning never came quietly. At 4:37 a.m., Nora shook me awake. "Ezra, the field. It's glowing! I bolted upright!" Through the window, the horizon burned orange. Flames licking up from the south ridge, where the gasoline had been. The fire roared fast, devouring months of work in minutes. We called 911, but the wind turned savage, driving embers north. I tried to form a fire break with the tractor, plowing through burning rows while heat scorched my arms. By dawn, half the field was gone. By sunrise, all of it. When the fire chief arrived, he told me what I already knew. "Accelerant," he said, pointing to the blackened residue. "Someone started this on purpose." I just nodded, watching smoke curl above the ruins. "The university samples. The research data. Gone." Deputy Brennan showed up again, jaw tight. "Ezra, I've got your camera footage." And this time, it's enough. He didn't need to say her name. We both knew. Delilah was arrested that afternoon. Arson, property destruction, trespassing, the whole stack. But as the cruiser pulled out of Millbrook Estates, she turned her head and smiled through the window. Not a smirk, a smile. Like she'd won something I didn't understand yet. 2 days later, I found out what she meant. The insurance investigator showed up. Stiff suit, clipboard, fake sympathy. "Mr. Calloway, I'm sorry to inform you your policy has been suspended pending investigation." "Suspended?" I said, blinking. "Why?" He cleared his throat. "Anonymous reports claim you may have intentionally burned the field to collect the payout. Until we verify, no funds can be released." I laughed, short and bitter. "Let me guess. Those reports came from Delilah's HOA email address." He didn't respond. Just wrote something down and left. Nora found me sitting by the edge of the field that night, the ground still warm beneath the ash. She handed me a beer and said quietly, "She's not just crazy. She's strategic." She was right. Delilah hadn't lost. She'd scorched the earth on her way out. The next morning a letter arrived from her lawyer. "Cease all public defamation of Ms. Thornfield or face civil litigation." Even in jail, she was still fighting, but she'd forgotten one thing. Cameras never lie, and mine had captured everything. Every drop of gasoline, every second of footage, every frame of her walking through the rows with fire in her hands. What she didn't know was that the federal insurance adjuster from the university had already seen it. Justice doesn't arrive with sirens. It creeps in quietly, like dawn over ash. The week after the fire, Cedar Falls smelled like char and damp smoke. My field looked like an autopsy table, nothing left but black ribs of stalks jutting from the soil. Nora kept the blinds shut. June didn't post for days, but me? I sat on the porch every morning, coffee going cold, waiting. Waiting for the people who thought they could ruin a man and walk away. It started with a knock on the door, 2 men in plain clothes, IDs clipped to their belts. "Mr. Calloway? Federal Crop Insurance Bureau." They'd received copies of my footage directly from the university. Turns out Dr. Yamamoto had filed her own report after seeing the arson video. The insurance wasn't suspended anymore. It was under federal review, which meant every claim, every accusation, every anonymous report was now part of a criminal investigation. And Delilah Thornfield was about to find out what happens when you commit federal insurance fraud, even by proxy. That afternoon, I drove into town. The courthouse steps were crawling with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. Delilah was there, wrapped in a beige shawl, escorted by her lawyer. Her perfect suburban composure was cracking, eyes red, mouth trembling. She spotted me through the crowd. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice shaking. "You destroyed my life." I didn't answer. I just handed a flash drive to the federal investigator standing beside me. This contains timestamps, surveillance footage, and her HOA emails. You'll want to read the ones she sent about property improvement through removal of agricultural eyesores. He nodded. We already have. By sunset, Delilah was in custody again. This time not for trespassing, but for arson, malicious intent to defraud a federal insurer, and reckless endangerment. Her HOA board tried to distance themselves immediately, issuing a statement about her acting independently, but the damage was done. Millbrook Estates was now under legal audit for falsified zoning complaints. Funny thing about arrogance, it spreads like mold in communities built on vanity. A week later, I got the official letter, claim approved. The payout wasn't just enough to rebuild, it was enough to expand. With Rachel's help, we leased 40 additional acres north of town. The new soil was rich, untouched, and far from any HOA fences. I called it Thornfield Acres, because if you're going to name something after your enemy, make sure it grows better than anything she ever built. The morning we planted the first seeds, the sky was clear, the air sharp and sweet. Nora stood beside me, smiling for the first time in months. June filmed it for her followers. The caption read, "Sometimes revenge grows back greener." As for Delilah, she took a plea deal. 3 years probation, fines, mandatory counseling. She moved out of Millbrook Estates before the first frost. Her house still sits empty. HOA rules forbid new occupants until the incident concludes in civil court. Every time I drive past that neighborhood, I slow down. The lawns still look perfect, trimmed, watered, soulless. But beyond the cul-de-sac where my fields begin again, the corn glows gold under the evening light. The same light that once reflected off gasoline now shines on renewal. And if the wind's right, I swear I can hear it whisper, "You can burn the crop, but not the soil. The land always remembers who tried to destroy it."